Hi, my name is Swag East. Today we're going to be talking about William Colby, former DCI of the CIA, born January 4th, 1920, died May 6th, 1966, at the age of 76, under mysterious circumstances. Now, why are we talking about William Colby? Few reasons. One was his leadership in the CIA during the Vietnam War, during what he ran, the controversial program called the Phoenix program, and the mysterious death at the end of his life that surrounded the mysterious circumstances surrounding his death and the life he lived. Really, more than anything else, pretty interesting guy. So we've already went over his birth and his death. His early life, his father was professor can't speak of English, and he was an author and a soldier as well. His mother was a devout Catholic, and as he said many times, some of the biggest inspirations and driving forces in his life, William Colby said, was the Catholic faith and liberal politics. And when you hear liberal, understand there's a little more nuance. It does not just mean the left that we have today. It would be more of democracy in general. But he graduated in Burlington, Vermont. After graduating in Burlington, Vermont, he went on to get his Bachelor of Arts in Politics from Princeton. So obviously we can see very educated man, went to an Ivy League school. His grandpa also taught chemistry at Columbia, where he, after he finished from Princeton, went to Columbia for 1 year. After 1 year, William Colby at Columbia decided to volunteer for active duty during World War II. And where would he serve? No other place than the front runner for the CIA, the OSS, or the Office of Strategic Services, again, which was really the template, the front runner to the CIA that we see today. And I think an important thing to know about the OSS is that it was the first independent intelligence agency of the US, established, like I said, during World War II on June 13th, 1942. A lot of the big movers and shakers in the OSS at the time moved on to the CIA. A lot of them we'll talk about again in later videos include Allen Dulles, Richard Helms, and William Casey are some of the other big names you need to know. But anyway, back to William Colby. During World War II, he worked in the Norso group in Norway, destroying railroads to prohibit German troops from being moved back into Germany during the end of the war, called Operation Ripe. After that war, he went and finished his law degree at Columbia, and then he went and worked in New York at a law firm for none other than, again, Wild Bill William J. Donovan, his law firm. But he got bored of practicing law for a while, and he wanted to devote his life again to politics. And where else would you go but Sweden? First he went to Sweden, and then to Rome, and then he was the chief of CIA operations in Saigon. But it is important to note that from 1951 to about 1958, that was when he was working in Sweden and in Rome, working on stay-behind armies as part of Operation Gladio in case of communist in general or Russia in particular invasions, as a way to try and suppress and destroy the power structures of the communist parties. And to understand the concept of a stay-behind army is essentially to train soldiers to live as civilians, and if your country is to ever be overran, those civilians can participate in a guerrilla warfare. They would have weapons and supply caches to commit whatever acts are deemed necessary. And we saw this in Italy, especially with the CIA and the Vatican. Saw it in Germany. Again, we saw it in the Scandinavians with William Colby, where this is where I think really one of the times he started to take more of a leadership role. And then after he finishes there, and he moves on to Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, From 1959 to 1967, we slowly see him climb the CIA ladder to go from Saigon to the head of all CIA operations in Asia. In 1971 in particular, we really see him start to climb the ladder when he returns to Washington 2 years later, taking over the CIA. And here's my notes. He runs the CIA for 3 years, where he is then succeeded by none other than the 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, who was not at the president at the time. Don't get it twisted. But I do think it's important we talk about while he was in Vietnam. He was part of the Phoenix Project as a manager. Just my paper. So in short, the Phoenix program was a counterinsurgency program to go against the NLF, not the NFL. Sadly, we're not against Roger Goodell. It was against the NLF, the Northern Liberation Front, and the Viet Cong. Who was it? What was it? It was essentially mostly ran by the CIA to train the militia and the police force to combat the NLF and the Viet Cong using PRUs, or provincial reconnaissance units, essentially information gatherers who would identify certain members of the Viet Cong, NLF, capture them, interrogate them, torture them, to weaken the power structure of the Viet Cong. We're going to say that going forward, to bundle those two together for sake of time. It was quite a unique operation as it focused its enforcement on local government and militia and police forces rather than doing a soldier on soldier, power of numbers battle. It was a quite different battle. This is where I think, again, we start to see a new type of espionage, where it's not necessarily just like the movies where it's one guy trying to track down one person or one guy against the whole world. We really see it as on a more militia level, on a more we especially in America, we wouldn't really typically think of a police force being organized in this way, where they would be going out, and you could say they would go out and arrest people, but they wouldn't go out, take them, interrogate them, using methods of shock, starvation, beating, drowning, and a lot more gruesome things I can't say. It was effective in a lot of ways, but at the same time, in a lot of ways, obviously, when you suspect people of being terrorists, you suspect people of being part of a hidden army, you might say. And I don't want to sit here and try and play good or bad or claim morality on either side. This is just in hypothetical, so I don't want to try and say who was good and who was bad in Vietnam War. I'm speaking more in generality to try and drive a point home. But when you, especially since they put down a quota, that was probably the biggest critique I have of the Phoenix program, is when you put down a quota of how many people you have to bring in a month, immediately people become almost like quarterly earnings, and soon everyone becomes a member of the Viet Cong. And I think this led to a lot of unnecessary deaths and tortures. Again, I think a lot more nuance needs to be gone into, but I think this is to understand the Phoenix program as a whole. When you run counterinsurgency, essentially everyone is suspicious, and when everyone's suspicious, there's bound to be people that are taken down, sadly, that did not need to be. But anywho, after the Phoenix program and his time in Vietnam, we see him return again to Washington, like we went over earlier. He starts getting the hot water because at this time, when he really takes over the CIA as the DCI, the Director of Central Intelligence, we see Watergate scandal come out, and post-Vietnam War fallout. After every war, there tends to be a fallout. This one brutal because of said programs, such as the Phoenix program. So he takes a document that had been originally compiled by, I have it written down here. What was that guy's name? I can't remember off the top of my head. It's an odd name. James R. Schlesinger, who had been one of the previous DCIs. It was roughly, I believe it was 693 page. He released it to some members of Congress, William Colby did, even though it wasn't compiled by him, he took it and released it to some members of Congress. It was called The Family Jewels, or The Skeletons of the CIA. In summary, it just went over a lot of the wrongdoings, a lot of the, I would say, the acts of treason that the CIA has committed, from the attempted assassination of Fidel Castro, spying on multiple American citizens. Some of them were anti-war people. Some of them were liberation theology. Some of them were communist supporters. Some of them were just journalists that were critical of the CIA specifically. Again, there's a lot more we could go into, but this is supposed to be a large overview. And also involves some of MK Ultra, which again is something very large to get into. Like I said, this is just an overview of who he was. I'd like to make more videos on him, but just to get a general idea of who he was, what he was involved with, the type of warfare that he was involved with. Again, it's not really a man-on-man, it's more of it's a subversion, it's co-op, it's espionage, and that's why I think he's so interesting, where he comes from. Again, we get to the end of his life, he dies on the Potomac River on a canoe trip, very safe canoer. He died, it said he died of a heart attack and fell into the water where he succumbed to, you could say, all three: hypothermia, drowning, heart attack. Again, a lot of mysterious circumstances surrounding his death. But, I mean, really, who he was as a man, it's hard to compile it all into one thing. Devout Catholic. He was a father. I believe he had 5 kids. His son recently released a book about the death of his father and a lot of the mysterious circumstances. But, I mean, it's an interesting man all in all. It's hard to say what he did right and what he did wrong, where he's dealing with he's dealing with problems at such a large bird's eye view, such a large scale. It's hard to really hone in morality on something like this and say completely good or completely bad. I think we need to have a lot more nuance. But that is a short. One day I'd like to do a longer video on the life of William Colby, a much longer, more in-depth video. But more than anything else, I wanted to record a video. I actually recorded a 30-minute video before this, going over this exact same thing, but I stuttered through it. Not that I didn't stutter through this one, but that one was horrendous. But you know what? I recorded it, so one of these videos is going to get posted. And in the future, I hope to do more book reviews. I think book reviews would be kind of fun. Do more summaries on lives of people, whether they're along the lines of espionage, geopolitics, politicians, religious. I think it'd be fun to get in the lives of religious peoples. Do a lot of book reviews. You know, I'm working through The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. A little bit underwhelmed. I'm only like 3/4 of the way through the book, so maybe the last 100 pages will change it. But I mean just that one, for example, a little bit underwhelmed. It was, again, when we talk about nuance, that's a book that I just feel like didn't really deal with a lot of nuance. It was pretty general, and it just kind of felt pretty underwhelming for how popular of a book it is. But yeah, hopefully I can do more book reviews, talk about more people. Hopefully I can get this video out. But until then, I'm Swag East. Thank you for watching. Please like it, subscribe, comment what you'd like. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below. I'd like to put more videos out soon. Thank you guys. Have a good day.